the ether. The ancients called it the fifth element, the invisible force that holds the universe together. But today, it's almost as if ether never existed, erased from science, forgotten by history, and buried in obscurity. Was this just the march of progress? Or was ether deliberately silenced, hidden to prevent humanity from understanding the profound, invisible web that connects us all? Because a society that grasps this truth would be freer, stronger, impossible to divide. And here's where it gets even more mysterious. What if the disappearance of ether wasn't an accident? What if it was part of a deliberate effort to reshape how humanity understands itself, to serve an agenda we're only beginning to uncover? In the last chapter of this video, we'll confront the question no one wants to ask. Who benefited from making us forget, and why? Let's find out. To the ancients, ether wasn't merely a theory. It was their way of making sense of the profound mysteries that defined existence. Aristotle called it the fifth element, an eternal substance beyond the reach of decay, bridging the terrestrial and the celestial. Ether was the medium through which the stars moved, the light traveled, and the heavens whispered their secrets. But Aristotle's ether wasn't an anomaly. Across the world, cultures separated by oceans and centuries shared remarkably similar ideas about an unseen force that pervaded everything. In Hindu philosophy, Akasha was more than the canvas for sound. It was the source of all creation, the infinite essence from which life and consciousness emerge. Chinese thought spoke of qi, the life force that coursed through the universe, animating everything from the wind in the trees to the beating of a human heart. The Egyptians called it Ka, the spirit energy that linked the living and the dead, and the Norse revered Aether, the primordial essence of creation itself. Why this convergence? These civilizations didn't have access to one another's knowledge, yet their understanding of a universal, invisible substance resonates as though they were describing the same phenomenon. Could it be that they were all perceiving something real, something modern science, with its hyper-focus on the tangible, has trained us to ignore? But ether was never just a scientific curiosity. To the ancients, it was far more than a physical explanation of the cosmos. It was a sacred truth. Ether embodied the unity of all things. It reminded humanity that separation was an illusion, that existence was a single, interconnected whole. To deny ether was to deny this fundamental unity, a notion that shaped not only their understanding of the universe, but their values, relationships, and sense of purpose. So why did this idea begin to fade? Was it merely lost amidst the rise and fall of empires, a casualty of shifting intellectual tides? Or could there have been a deeper, more deliberate force at play, something intent on burying the idea that we are all profoundly connected? The disappearance of ether from human consciousness wasn't just a loss of a concept. It was the loss of a way of seeing the world, a loss that may hold the key to many of our struggles today. The 19th century was a time of breathtaking innovation and a dangerous overconfidence in humanity's ability to measure and quantify the universe. With steam engines transforming industries and mechanistic thinking dominating the sciences, many believed that every mystery of existence could be solved with the right equations and instruments. In this era of discovery, ether, long considered the medium through which light, energy, and even life moved, became a central focus of investigation. Physicists like James Clerk Maxwell built entire theories on the concept of the luminiferous ether, the supposed cosmic sea through which light waves traveled, much like sound needs air. The logic seemed unassailable. Light behaved like a wave, so it must have a medium. To many, the existence of ether wasn't a question of if, but how. But then came the Michelson-Morley experiment in 1887, a pivotal moment in science. This carefully designed experiment sought to measure the Earth's movement through the ether. The result? Silence. No measurable evidence of ether was detected. This result was puzzling, not conclusive. Yet, in the absence of observable proof, the idea of ether began to falter. Einstein's theory of relativity arrived not long after, offering a new framework for understanding the cosmos, one that didn't rely on ether to explain the propagation of light. Though Einstein himself later acknowledged that ether wasn't necessarily disproven, it was deemed unnecessary for his equations. Slowly but decisively, the scientific community declared ether obsolete. But was it truly a scientific conclusion, or a convenient shift in narrative? The 20th century's materialist worldview embraced what could be measured and monetized. Ether, with its mystical undertones of interconnectedness, didn't align with this mechanistic industrial perspective. It wasn't just abandoned, it was dismissed, almost ridiculed, as superstition. Yet some argue that the burial of ether was more than a byproduct of scientific progress. A worldview rooted in ether, a worldview that recognizes unity, interconnection, and shared purpose, is profoundly disruptive to systems of power. Societies that value connection over competition are harder to manipulate. A humanity that sees itself as part of an infinite, cohesive whole is less likely to accept divisions imposed from above. Could the erasure of ether have served not just scientific expedience, but also societal control? Ether wasn't disproven so much as it was forgotten, pushed to the margins of thought. Its loss wasn't just the end of a scientific concept, it marked a shift in how humanity saw itself, not as threads in a cosmic tapestry, but as disconnected cogs in an industrial machine. And the consequences of that shift echo into our lives today. When ether was dismissed, humanity didn't just lose a scientific theory, it lost an entire way of seeing the world. For centuries, ether symbolized unity, the idea that everything in existence is connected by an invisible fabric. Its disappearance from our collective consciousness reshaped not only science, but the very foundations of how we understand ourselves and reality. This shift from connection to fragmentation wasn't just philosophical. It shaped how we built the modern world. The rise of mechanistic thinking reduced nature to a collection of resources to be extracted, living systems to a series of inputs and outputs, and people to isolated individuals in constant competition. In losing ether, we began to see the universe as a machine rather than a living, breathing web of relationships. This mindset has permeated every aspect of life. Economically, it feeds consumerism, the belief that happiness lies in accumulating external things rather than nurturing internal or relational wealth. Environmentally, it justifies the destruction of ecosystems, treating the planet as inert and lifeless. Socially, it thrives on division. encouraging us to see others not as part of our shared essence, but as adversaries or strangers. And what about the human experience? Disconnection manifests as an epidemic of loneliness, anxiety, and existential confusion. Without a sense of belonging to something greater, we're left searching for meaning in a world that feels fragmented and chaotic. Aether's loss wasn't just intellectual, it was deeply emotional, severing the invisible threads that anchor us to the cosmos and each other. Most profoundly, forgetting Aether has stripped us of the understanding that our actions and intentions ripple outward. We've been trained to see ourselves as small, powerless, and separate. But the truth is that the universe has always been interconnected, whether or not we acknowledge it. The consequences of forgetting Aether surround us in our strained relationship with the planet, our fractured societies, and the deep yearning for connection that so many feel. Reclaiming Aether isn't just about science or history. It's about restoring this lost sense of belonging. It's about remembering that we were never meant to live as fragments, but as integral parts of an infinite whole. If Aether, or something like it, exists, it changes how we see not just the universe, but ourselves. This isn't just a theory about space or energy fields. It's a challenge to the way we live our daily lives. Think about this. What if every interaction, every thought, wasn't confined to you alone? Modern physics suggests that the universe is a vast network of interdependent systems, where no particle exists in isolation. If that's true, then you're not just a passive observer of the world, you're an active participant in its unfolding. Consider the unexplained phenomena that hint at these hidden connections. Take intuition, those moments when you sense someone's thoughts before they speak, or feel a loved one's emotions across great distances. Studies in quantum entanglement have shown that particles can remain connected, sharing information instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are. Could our minds, and even our hearts, function in a similar way, tied to an unseen field that science is only beginning to understand? This isn't just speculation. Research in fields like epigenetics shows how our thoughts and environments can alter genetic expression, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. The choices you make today, your mindset, your intentions, don't just affect you. They could ripple through time, shaping lives yet to come. And then there's the power of collective focus. When groups come together with shared intention, measurable changes happen. This has been observed in everything from coordinated global meditations to the way social movements gain unstoppable momentum. Could this be Aether in action? A glimpse of the unseen threads that bind us all? Aether asks us to rethink separation, not just as a scientific idea, but as a personal one. The divisions we perceive between people, places, and even moments in time might not be real. If you are part of a universal web, then every decision you make, every action you take, sends vibrations through a much larger whole. The question isn't just, well, what does this mean for me? It's, what do I want my impact to be? When we see ourselves as connected to everything, we're no longer small or insignificant. We're creators, shaping reality itself. Here's the question we can no longer ignore. Who stood to gain from erasing Aether, and why? To understand this, we need to recognize what was truly lost. Aether wasn't just a scientific concept, it was a worldview. Aether teaches that everything is interconnected, that every action ripples through the universe, and that separation is an illusion. A society that believes this is powerful. Its people understand their intrinsic worth, their connection to each other, and their ability to create change. But what happens if that belief is stripped away? Disconnection breeds vulnerability. Fear and isolation make people easier to control. Systems of power, whether political, economic, or social, thrive when individuals feel small, divided, and dependent. Consumerism, for instance, depends on convincing you that you're incomplete, that you need to buy, achieve, and compete to fill the void. If you knew you were already part of a vast, interconnected whole, would you fall for it? Would you prioritize possessions over purpose or competition over community? A worldview rooted in ether dismantles the very foundation of such systems. Now think about political structures. For centuries, empires and regimes have relied on division to maintain control. Us versus them narratives, artificial borders, and the exploitation of fear have kept populations in line. Ether's message of unity across people, nature, and the cosmos is a direct threat to these power dynamics. And then there's the Industrial Revolution, where ether's disappearance reached its peak. As humanity shifted to machines, factories, and material wealth, the idea of an interconnected universe became inconvenient. A worldview that valued unity and harmony didn't align with a system built on exploitation and extraction. Could ether have been suppressed intentionally? Consider the parallels. Tesla's free energy was buried, indigenous knowledge was erased, and any philosophy that threatened centralized power was ridiculed or dismissed. The disappearance of ether fits this pattern perfectly, not because it lacked merit, but because it empowered people to think beyond the systems that sought to control them. So, who benefited? The answer is clear. Those who profit from division, from fear, from a fragmented humanity. And why? Because a world disconnected from ether is a world where people are easier to manipulate, nature is easier to exploit, and power is easier to hoard. But the story doesn't end there. Rediscovering ether isn't just about reclaiming a forgotten truth. It's about reclaiming ourselves. Because the more we understand our interconnectedness, the harder it becomes for anyone to convince us that we are powerless. The ether was never truly lost. It lingers in the spaces between our understanding, woven into the mysteries of the cosmos and the wisdom of forgotten cultures. It's there in the quiet awe of the universe, in the silent knowing that we are all connected, and in the deep longing for meaning that modern life often fails to provide, a longing deliberately amplified by the systems that thrive on our disconnection. But the rediscovery of ether isn't just a journey into the past, it's an act of defiance against the forces that profit from keeping us divided. It's a call to question the narratives that tell us we are small, powerless, and isolated, and to reclaim the truth that has always been ours, that we are part of a vast, infinite web of existence, one that no system of control can sever unless we let it. Ether is more than an ancient idea. It's an invitation to remember that the universe is alive, that we are its threads, and that our choices, thoughts, and actions shape reality in ways we've been taught to ignore. It urges us to confront the systems that thrive on disconnection and to act with the certainty that connection has always been our greatest power. The question isn't whether ether exists. It's whether we're brave enough to reclaim its truth, to move beyond the fragments of modern life and embrace the unity we've always sensed deep within. In doing so, we don't just rediscover ether, we rediscover ourselves.